My name is Julie Tremp, and I'm making this video to make the public aware of what we believe to be a cover-up on the Jacob Wetterling case. Jacob Wetterling was abducted October 22nd, 1989. In 1997, Diane Muehlbauer stumbled into some evidence. There were two individuals involved that alleged their involvement in the Jacob Wetterling abduction. And they also implicate another individual in Jacob's abduction. The individual that confessed was Michael Boehner. He confessed July 7th, 1997. His brother Richard confessed to inmates in jail of his involvement. They implicate Lou Coles, or Louis Coles, Kohls, in his abduction. They allege, Michael Boehner alleges that Jacob's father put Lou Coles up to abducting Jacob. Whether that's true or not, we don't know. That has to be investigated. But after the confession, Larry Peart and Officer Todd Newman took this information into the Stearns County Sheriff's Department. They were met with opposition. Complete opposition. They told them to say that there was never confession. They asked them to apologize. They were not nice. Diane Muehlbauer did not go after this. They came to her. Michael Boehner wanted to get something off his chest, and he originally was going to talk to another bail agent that worked with Diane. However, he ended up talking to Diane Muehlbauer about it, and over a period of time, Diane obtained this evidence that further corroborates his confession. This is a very tragic situation. I got involved in 2014, very late 2014, near Christmas time. At the time, I thought a pedophile from Ohio by the name of Harold Jerry Mash looked like the sketch that they featured on The Hunt with John Walsh that was featuring the Jacob Wetterling the Jacob Wetterling abduction. They could not place Mash up at the abduction site, but through my research I found Diane Muehlbauer's name. And I told Diane that I've been working with a gentleman by the name of Richard Leonard at NCMEC. Richard was helping me get the information that I sent him on Harold Jerry Mash to the appropriate parties in law enforcement. Let's make it clear, Harold Jerry Mash was never placed up there in the Minnesota area. But during my research, I found Diane Muehlbauer, and she started telling me about this evidence. I was floored. It took me 2 months to wrap my head around it. Over a course of time, I learned more and more the gravity of this evidence. She had tried a very long time to get this evidence investigated. There were investigators that were told not to investigate this. She was told this by one of the investigators that was sent to her. Daniel James Heinrich could not have abducted Jacob. Not knowing what we know, that's not a possibility. The FBI was correct when they cleared him in 1990. They did not have anything on him. The warrants that we looked at during the process of going through numerous documents and trying to get different various officials to look into this, we noticed that the warrants on Dan Rassier did not even appear to be legal. Witness statements were changed. This man's life was entirely ruined for many, many, many years. He was my son's age when they started to try to, when they named him a person of interest and eventually a suspect. His life was turned upside down. They knew about this 1997 evidence when they did that to him. Pam Jensen didn't know it existed until 2014. I'm sorry, not 2014. Prior to that, when Diane reached out to her, she did not know it existed. So clearly, the evidence was not anywhere to be seen, not by her eyes. And then when we contacted her later, she wanted to try to find a connection between Lou Coles and Jacob's father. That's when she no longer had a job. This is what happened to any investigator that tried to look into this 1997 evidence. Heinrich, Daniel James Heinrich, was not convicted on Jacob's abduction, sexual assault, and murder. Do you know why? Because if it were to become a conviction, this would be a travesty of justice, because a jury trial would bring forth discovery, and the discovery of the 1997 evidence. And the 1997 evidence is exculpatory evidence for the defense, and it would exonerate Daniel Heinrich. And then he'd be walking free. He's guilty of possession of child pornography. He should be serving a 70-year sentence, not a 17-year sentence. And 24 of the 25 counts of child pornography should have not been removed. This is a plea deal offered to him to get him to tell the judge something that he did not do. There are multitudes of inconsistencies in his confession transcript. An 11-year-old little boy was murdered. There was an eyewitness that alleges he was there when Jacob was murdered. Jacob was held for a period of time after the Boehners and Lou Coles picked him up and abducted him. I don't know what that little boy went through. That has yet to be investigated. Diane can only say what's there in the evidence and what the corroborating witnesses are saying, and the eyewitnesses that placed the Boehner brothers there at the abduction site, and the two other witnesses that placed Lou Coles' burgundy vehicle speeding towards the abduction site. And there's other witnesses that no further information about the Boehners and Luke Halls that further corroborates their involvement. Tell me this, why did Vernon Seitz, a serial pedophile, have any association with Jerry Wetterling? The Boehner brothers, Luke Halls, and Vern Seitz all alleged that they knew Jerry Wetterling. Allegedly, Jerry Wetterling sent Vern Seitz to meet with Diane Muehlbauer to listen to the abduction tape. All of this stuff is on recordings. There's a record of all of this. Why not come yourself, Jerry Wetterling? Why not call the FBI and say, oh my God, there is a person confessing on tape to my son's kidnapping. Do something. Nothing was done. He sends a serial pedophile to listen to the tape. Then the serial pedophile offers Diane money a couple days later. And Diane told him, this isn't about money. This is about getting this information investigated. It needs to be investigated. There is enough evidence to give probable cause to get warrants, search warrants on the Boehner properties, Luke Halls, and the Wetterlings. And that was probable cause all the way back in 1997 that should have been done. But it wasn't. The eyewitness that saw Jacob murdered said that there were multiple people involved in this elaborate kidnapping. What happened to Jacob when this was done? How was he killed? There's something very, very wrong here. Sarah Westall interviewed me and Diane Muehlbauer regarding this evidence. Larry Peart was also interviewed by a producer. Larry Peart died 13 days after I spoke with Julie Allen, when Julie Allen, who is from the U.S. Prosecutor's Office for the District of Minnesota, she was involved in the Heinrich plea deal. Yet, she called me last year, August 15th, 2018, asking me to have someone bring this evidence to her. An investigator bring this evidence to her. Who? Stearns County won't. Then she said, any investigator. 13 days later, Larry Peart died. He was an investigator. He was involved in the investigation of this 1997 evidence. He's gone. This is very tragic. This has been a very hard road for Diane Muehlbauer trying to get this investigated. It has been very frustrating for me, and I've only been involved for almost 5 years. Thankfully, Richard Leonard believed in this. He told us to reach out to the Attorney General, which I did. I called them Friday. We have reached out to officials multitudes of times, and we have reached out to the Attorney General before. This time, however, I spoke with a person by the name of Lisa. She listened. She called back and said a man by the name of James Van Buskirk, who was an attorney there, one of the assistants, was very interested in looking at this. I followed up yesterday and talked to another individual who sounded rather patronizing and was reluctant to let me know whether or not the emails were received. He said if I didn't show a kickback emails saying that they weren't received, that they received them. That's all he would say. Well, he did say something else. He said, we'll give it the attention it deserves. Okay, well, you better give it the attention it deserves, because it does deserve attention. We're not going to stop doing this. We're going to keep this coming. This is enough of the cover-up. Julie Allen knows. Why would she call me after hours on an unlisted phone asking for evidence? Why would Richard Leonard tell me to reach out to the Attorney General? Why would a commissioner say there were several politicians involved in a cover-up? This was 2017. And when they offered to help us, the Wetterlings shut the file down. There's all kinds of interesting behaviors that have developed. And all these behaviors developed every time Diane and I had another development. All the way from Heinrich becoming a person of interest, all the way up to his confession, all the way up to these files being stalled for a period of time. There was information still left in those files that further corroborate Diane's evidence. And this information is telling us that Jacob could have possibly been saved, because an anonymous caller called in and said they knew that Jacob was going to be murdered. It was never followed up on. It was filed. Stearns County has been covering this up a long time. I don't know who else is connected to this, but there's enough connected to this to create this farce with Heinrich. Do your job. Do your damn job, Stearns County, or whoever is involved in this. Do your job.